have you moved out yet? Since my eldest son will be living here, you, the dropout daughter-in-law, should leave. At a party showcasing the renovated in-laws house, my mother-in-law said this to me with a chuckle. Mother-in-law and the couple, William and his wife, have always looked down on me for being a dropout. It seems they plan to take over the house my husband and I renovated. This might be a good chance to show them that everyone has their limits. My name is Olivia and I'm a 42-year-old housewife. My husband, Jackson, is 40, making me the older spouse. Both my parents passed away from cancer when I was young. They didn't suffer long. They were hospitalized and passed away shortly after. I grew up moving from one relative's house to another. Growing up, I mistakenly felt the need to leave my relatives' homes as soon as possible. I have 2 younger brothers and I felt responsible for supporting them. Ignoring my relatives' advice, I dropped out of school and started working. I left my brothers with my relatives and got a job at a company with a dormitory. I began a life of sending financial support to my relatives every month. Now, my brothers have grown up, married, and have their own children. After seeing them settled, I quit my long-time job. Currently, I'm helping out a friend's startup from home. Jackson and I have been married for 12 years. Our child turned 10 this year. Jackson is the younger of 2 siblings, with an older brother named William. When we decided to get married, Jackson optimistically thought we wouldn't have to live with his parents since he's the second son. But as it turned out, William and his wife didn't want to live with the in-laws and moved out early on. So, we ended up living with Jackson's parents, taking care of them. Mother-in-law seems to enjoy picking on her in-laws. I've been shocked by her behavior since our first meeting. I believe William and his wife moved out because of mother-in-law's attitude. The first time I visited the in-laws' house, Emma, William's wife, was treated like a housekeeper by mother-in-law. I remember feeling scared seeing that, and I thought I'd never live with them. Moreover, mother-in-law is oddly obsessed with educational backgrounds. Both her sons graduated from state universities. My father-in-law used to be a college professor, and mother-in-law was a high school teacher before retiring. I married into this highly educated family. When mother-in-law found out I was a dropout, she strongly opposed our marriage. It was a miracle we got married. Even after our wedding, mother-in-law's condescending attitude towards me never changed. William and his wife are also college graduates. From them, too, my days of being belittled began. Once we started living together, mother-in-law's harassment began immediately. At first, it was small things. Only my fork was always a disposable one. In the beginning, mother-in-law prepared our meals. She also served the food, but I always got a disposable fork. Even the fork I bought for myself would be thrown away by mother-in-law. When I told her using disposable forks is wasteful, let's stop, she frowned and said, after all, I don't like washing a non-family member's fork. The idea of washing someone else's fork every time gives me the creeps. I was taken aback by what my mother-in-law said. Back then, I was younger and had never faced such blatant hostility. I wondered if she saw me as an outsider, hence the disposable fork, but it didn't make sense. She kept emphasizing that I was an outsider since I married into the family. Then, I noticed something. Only the towel I used was washed separately, and it was often washed without detergent. Many times, it was left damp, leading to a musty smell. I was the only one using a moldy-smelling towel. Perhaps mother-in-law's eagerness to do the chores was a way to subtly torment me. There were times I came home late from work and found myself locked out. Sorry, I didn't notice, she'd say with a sly grin. I was sure it was intentional, but there was someone else who added to my distress. Emma, my brother-in-law William's wife, or my sister-in-law. When I first met her, she seemed downtrodden, treated like a housemaid by mother-in-law. But once she was free from mother-in-law's grip, she changed. She teamed up with mother-in-law, the very person who tormented her, to harass me. I remember learning in school not to do unto others what you don't want done to you. Emma seemed to have forgotten that. The two, once at odds, now seemed eerily close. Every day, they'd gossip about me, saying things like, "That's why dropouts are like this," right in front of me. I wish they'd at least gossip out of my sight. Emma seemed like a pushover for mother-in-law. She accepted everything mother-in-law said, and never forgot to sing her praises. The way she constantly tried to please mother-in-law left me speechless. Living like this was stressful. I'd occasionally vent to my husband Jackson, but he seemed not to fully understand. He wasn't entirely on mother-in-law's side, but he wasn't entirely on mine either. He lacked decisiveness, but was genuinely kind. I love Jackson. I don't want to cause him any trouble. If enduring this would bring peace, I was willing to bear it. Jackson did understand my efforts. From time to time, he'd secretly buy me my favorite cookies. Emma would often drop by unannounced. I work remotely, so I'm often in my room during the day. And I'm not just lounging around. I'm busy with back-to-back meetings and writing articles. Lately, Emma's favorite pastime seems to be disrupting my remote meetings. She'd walk down the hallway talking loudly, or open my door to mock me. One day, she burst in saying, "Stop pretending to work. It's so off-putting." I was in an important meeting, dressed in a suit. She even waved at my boss on the screen. I wished she'd stop. After I managed to get her out, she and mother-in-law gossiped about me in the hallway. During the meeting, I was sweating bullets. It was an experience I never want to remember. Then, out of the blue, something unbelievable happened. We decided to have dinner with William and his wife, and mother-in-law splurged on high-end steak takeout. Even though it's a high-quality steak, I only had the side menu. Of course, I only got the side dishes. Such petty acts had been going on for 12 years. We had recently renovated the house, especially for the elderly father-in-law and mother-in-law. We made it barrier-free and renovated the old bathroom, even adding a small sauna. Both father-in-law and mother-in-law were thrilled, and so was Jackson. Of course, we bore the renovation costs. William and his wife were excited to see the new bathroom and sauna. We also renovated one of our rooms, which they visited. Seeing the screen Jackson installed for movie watching, they looked envious. After the tour, the steak arrived and the dinner began. I had prepared salads, soups, and kids' meals. Since William and his wife didn't have kids, my child was the first grandchild for father-in-law and mother-in-law. As I nibbled on my side dishes and listened to mother-in-law and William's family discuss the renovation, mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "When are you moving out?" "William is moving in, so you need to leave." I was so shocked that I couldn't comprehend her words. "Wait, what do you mean? I've put up with you for 10 years. Now that the house is nice, it's time for you to go. I want to live with Emma and her family." I was stunned as my mother-in-law spoke with a smug grin, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I looked at William and his wife, thinking it was a joke, but they too had the same nasty smiles. "Hurry up and leave." Something inside me snapped at their mocking tone. Even the usually calm Jackson looked stern. I gave Jackson a look, asking, "Do we not have to put up with this anymore?" Jackson smiled and made a big circle gesture above his head. "So, you want us to leave this house?" I asked. Yes, it's been humiliating having a dropout like you here for 10 years, mother-in-law sneered. I was appalled. After all, she had run away from her own harassment. With Jackson's approval, I felt I no longer had to endure. "We'll move to a new, beautiful, and spacious house," I declared, smiling at William, his wife, and mother-in-law. Now it was their turn to be taken aback. "Huh?" As they stared in disbelief, I repeated myself. Their expressions showed that they hadn't grasped the situation. Olivia and I were talking about maybe something like this could happen. You can imagine what William and the others would think. The usually quiet Jackson said in a deep voice, "From the start, we knew the renovation was for William and his wife. I had overheard them secretly discussing it with mother-in-law, but suggesting a renovation for an aging house seemed normal. I didn't want to believe there was malice behind it. I hesitated to bother Jackson with this, but I decided to let him in on what was happening. At first, Jackson seemed to think it was a joke, but when he heard someone wanted a sauna, he realized something was up. His father has high blood pressure and was advised against using saunas by his doctor. It turned out William was the one pushing for the sauna. We began to suspect that William and his wife planned to make us renovate the house, only to take it from us later, just like cuckoos taking over another bird's nest. We could have confronted William and his wife, or even my mother-in-law, but seeing Jackson's disappointment broke my heart. I think he wanted to trust William and mother-in-law until the very end. It made me tear up. "Why don't we build our own house?" I suggested, looking into Jackson's eyes. "What do you mean? Build a new, beautiful, spacious house? That sounds too good to be true." The first to react was Emma. She had always dreamed of a new home, but William's gambling habits meant they couldn't save up for one. They were also in debt and always strapped for cash. I believe they moved into Jackson's parents' house because they couldn't keep up with their apartment rent. They probably saw living rent-free in Jackson's parents' house as a step towards their dream home. I suspect they planned to sell the land once Jackson's parents passed away and used the money to buy a new, beautiful, spacious house. Yes, we finally got our new house. You can see it from here. It's the one right across the street. Emma, you've been admiring it, haven't you? I pointed to the newly built house across the road, the one Emma would gaze at dreamily every time she visited. I think it's her dream home. We initially planned to build somewhere farther away, but Jackson chose that plot. He probably wanted to show off our new home to William and his wife, who had plans to take over the renovated house. The plan worked. Emma looked genuinely upset. "We're moving to that house. William and his wife can handle the rest. They'll be living here, so they should cover the remaining renovation costs," Jackson said, smiling at William and his wife, but his eyes weren't smiling. It scared me. Once we finished our steaks, Jackson said, "Shall we move?" Our new home had just passed its final inspection the day before. I didn't expect William and his wife to spill the beans so soon, but I'm glad we were ready. "Olivia, you're such a failure as a wife. Your ideas are ridiculous and scary. Do you want to burden Jackson with more debt? You're so demanding." Mother-in-law shouted at me, clearly frustrated. She kept repeating demanding wife and dropout as if she couldn't think of any other insults. It was almost amusing. Mom apologized to Olivia. "What are you talking about? I'm just worried about you. It's sad to see you deceived by such a demanding dropout wife." Mother-in-law replied, reaching out to Jackson, but Jackson coldly brushed her hand away. Mother-in-law, who'd never been rejected by her son before, was in shock. I'd never seen Jackson act this cold before. It's terrible, deceived by such a demanding wife. "Do you plan to ignore me? Jackson's the one burdened with debt. He'll work for this demanding wife for the rest of his life, right? Can't you see that?" Mother-in-law cried out, tears streaming down her face. Jackson looked at her with cold eyes and let out a deep sigh. "Mom, why don't you get it? Olivia earns more than I do. The land and the house were bought with the money she saved when she was single. I don't have any debt. Why can't you be grateful to Olivia?" All eyes turned to me after Jackson's comment. Right after middle school, I started working to financially support my younger siblings who were being raised by our relatives. But those relatives never spent the money I gave them. When I became an adult, they handed it all back to me. At the same time, I also received the life insurance money my parents had left behind. Only when I became an adult did I understand why my relatives had desperately tried to stop me from working right after middle school. It's true. You really should listen to the whole story before jumping to conclusions. Because I never spent money on myself, I grew up not really knowing how to use it. I became a woman whose hobby was saving. When we first got married, I showed Jackson my bank card. He was shocked by the amount. This is what Olivia saved up. I want her to use it on something she truly desires. I was deeply moved by Jackson's words. I decided right then to use it on something Jackson really wanted. Olivia made my dream come true. I can't thank her enough, Jackson said with a smile. I felt a bit embarrassed and looked down. I was so happy to see Jackson pleased, and I felt refreshed seeing the stunned faces of William and mother-in-law and the frustrated look on Emma's face. Oh, by the way, no one but Dad is allowed in our house. Even if you come, you won't be let in. Jackson declared this to everyone present. Father-in-law jokingly said, "Oh, so I can visit," looking pleased. After we left, we could hear William's shouting and mother-in-law's screaming for a long time. After that, true to Jackson's declaration, William, his wife, and mother-in-law were never allowed in our new home. Father-in-law, however, visited almost daily, happily teaching our child chess. According to father-in-law, there's now constant fighting at the spouse's parents' house. Especially between mother-in-law and Emma, there seem to be numerous issues. Every day, they shout at each other, leaving William and father-in-law exasperated. William is now working a side job cleaning at night, burdened with his own debts and the renovation loan. He's losing patience with Emma, who insists on being a housewife. Father-in-law believes it's only a matter of time before they divorce. We've never received apology calls from mother-in-law, but Jackson says there's no need to answer it, so we don't. Our new home is truly wonderful, and we're living comfortably. We even got the border collie puppy our son always wanted. We've set up a small dog run in the yard with artificial turf. Our son is thrilled to have the puppy that mother-in-law wouldn't let him get at her house. Perhaps he had been holding back because of mother-in-law, but in our new home, he laughs out loud, sometimes to drown out the yelling from across the street. We're considering installing sound. Do you understand your position? You have no one to rely on. Yet you act like this. You can't listen to what your husband's mother says. Just keep quiet about it to my son. Got it? My mother-in-law's tone suddenly changed, and she began to shout. The argument started when my mother-in-law suggested joining us on our honeymoon. I never expected it to turn out like this. But with no other options, I faced the day of the trip. I had no idea that things would turn out unexpectedly from here on. My name is Julie, and I am 30 years old. I got married 2 months ago and now live with my husband and mother-in-law. I met my husband Tyson at work 4 years ago, and after 3 years of dating, I accepted his proposal. We went to his mother's house to introduce ourselves. I visited my in-laws with a light heart, but it was a mistake. My mother-in-law wrinkled her forehead at the sight of me and never showed me a smile, even though she always had a happy expression when talking to her son. With a heavy heart, Tyson said something as we were leaving. I'm sorry, Julie. My mom is really shy around people. Really? I thought maybe she didn't like me very much. No way. When I brought a male friend over in the past, she was the same way. She's just being shy, I'm sure. Oh, I see. Well, that's a relief. I thought she hated me for a second. No, no, no. That can't be. Of course she likes you. You're someone I chose. Okay, if you say so. After hearing his words about his mother's shyness being the reason for her behavior, I felt a little lighter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just that when I remembered the way his mother looked at me. After we registered our marriage the following month, something unexpected happened to us. Huh? What do you mean? I asked, and Tyson looked troubled. Mom contacted me yesterday and said she hasn't been feeling well lately. If you were okay with it, would you be willing to live with her for a while? Is your mom sick? No, I don't think so. But she is stubborn, so she might be hiding. I see. That's a worry. Yeah, it is. But I don't want to force it. I want to respect your feelings. Perhaps my husband will prioritize my feelings first. If I say I don't want to live with his mother and want to live with just the two of us, he should make it happen. But is that really okay? It seems that my father-in-law passed away a few years ago, and my mother-in-law is living alone in their family home. I understand the feeling of losing someone important because I also lost my parents during my college years. Thinking back to those lonely and vulnerable days when I lived alone still brings tears to my eyes. My mother-in-law is probably feeling the same way now, on top of not feeling well. After several days of consideration, I decided to live with my mother-in-law. When I told my decision to Tyson, he was surprised but lowered his head and thanked me with tears in his eyes. And so, we started our marriage life, living with my mother-in-law. However, this decision would come back to haunt me later. Regret quickly followed. Moving in with my in-laws meant that my husband's workplace farther away and my workplace was closer. As a result, my husband leaves the house early in the morning, and I can leave later, creating a couple of hours of alone time with my mother-in-law. I was eating breakfast alone after seeing my husband off when my mother-in-law came to the living room and gave me a disdainful look. What kind of nerve do you have? Eating breakfast before your mother-in-law? I'm sorry, but I need to get ready for work. I made breakfast. It's just toast and fried eggs. But would you like some? As soon as I said that, my mother-in-law's face turned red as she suddenly raised her voice. You didn't give Tyson such a shoddy breakfast, did you? What? Yes, I did. Unbelievable. You really are a failure. A failure? I couldn't believe what I was hearing from my mother-in-law. I never expected to be spoken to like that. Just one day into our cohabitation, from that day on, my mother-in-law's verbal abuse only escalated. She would take any opportunity to hurl hurtful words at me when Tyson wasn't around. You can't even do housework properly. You useless daughter-in-law. I don't know why Tyson chose her. What her looks and styles are not that great. Tyson must be pitied for having such a useless wife. And there are countless other things that come to mind. Mother. She moves around the house briskly, without showing any signs of poor health. However, when my husband is at home, she occasionally shows signs of feeling chest pain, even though she spits out abuse so vivaciously when she is with me. I thought about consulting my husband several times, but I was too scared to do so. Even after 3 months of marriage, my relationship with my mother-in-law remains the same. Lately, I'm often threatened like this. You better not go telling Tyson anything unnecessary. I don't have any intention of doing that. You'll be the one to regret it. If you leave this house, you won't have anywhere to go, without any relatives. Using the fact that I have no one to rely on, my mother-in-law is cornering me day by day. In the midst of such difficult days, one day, my husband and I suddenly decided to go on a honeymoon. Originally, it was planned immediately after the marriage, but we had decided not to until our work calmed down. Recently, the big project that my husband had been dealing with had been completed, so we decided to go on a trip at this timing. The destination was Mexico, which we had decided on beforehand. Oh, finally you are going on your honeymoon, huh? Yes. Our work had settled down now. That's good. What kind of place is the hotel, Julie? Oh, it looks lovely. Well, it's a bit over budget, but it's a highly rated hotel, so we decided to go for it. Like this, my mother-in-law naturally talks to me in front of my husband. It is so natural that my husband wouldn't even think that we were in bad terms. One day, a few weeks before our honeymoon, my mother-in-law dropped the bombshell. Julie, I just want to let you know, I'll be joining you on your honeymoon. What? What are you talking about? Oh, but keep it secret from Tyson. I want it to be a surprise. Wait a minute. This is our honeymoon. It's kind of weird for you to come with us, don't you think? Before I could finish my sentence, my mother-in-law gave me a cold glare. Her icy staring made me sever, and I couldn't say anything else. Do you understand your position? You have no one to rely on anyway. But this is just too, shut up. If you say anything else, I'll kick you out of this house. Just keep quiet from my son, okay? Unable to argue back, we ended up going on our honeymoon with my mother-in-law. On the day, we left the house with her seeing off and headed to the airport. A few hours after we arrived, my mother-in-law sent a message asking where we were. I reluctantly told her where we were, and 20 minutes later, a taxi pulled up in front of us, and as she got out of the car, she hugged my husband with a smile. Hey there. Did I surprise you? Huh? Mom, what are you doing here? I came to surprise you, Tyson. Julie invited me on this trip, and I thought it would be fun to come along. Hold on a second. What are you thinking, Mom? But Julie really wanted me to come, and she'll pay for everything. My husband looks at me and asks if it's true. Under the watchful eye of my mother-in-law, I can only nod silently. Seeing this, my mother-in-law smiles and speaks again, satisfied. Let's meet at the resort we booked. At 1 p.m. See ya. After saying that, my mother-in-law held the taxi and went somewhere. The atmosphere suddenly became tense, and the cheerful mood we had earlier disappears. My husband remained silent, looking down and lost in thoughts. Tyson, Julie, what is all this? I can't believe you invited Mom on our honeymoon, even though you were a sweet person. Is there something else going on? Please tell me the truth. If you are struggling with something, I want to know. Tyson. I'm torn between whether to tell him or not. If my mother-in-law finds out that I spoke out, it could end badly. As my mother-in-law said, I have nowhere to turn to. If I get kicked out of the house, it would be the worst outcome. My emotions are turmoil, and my thoughts are a jumbled mess. Tears start well up in my eyes, and my husband gently hugs me and says in a voice that sounds like he's about to cry, Julie, don't suffer alone. If something happens, I'll definitely help you. Tell me everything. I won't abandon you. As all the pain I had felt until now overflowed, tears unconsciously fell from my eyes. My husband continued to gently pat my back, as if trying to soothe me. Once I had cried for a while and calmed down, I told him about the conflict I had with my mother-in-law until now. My husband's face turned bright red, and he trembled with anger. That can't be true. That my mother did such a thing to you, Julie. I didn't plan on telling you either, but I never expected her to come along on our honeymoon. And she was trying to make you pay for the entire trip? She's unbelievable. Did you give her the money for the flight in advance too? Yes, and she demanded $1,000 for the optional tour for herself. What? Seriously? In front of my surprised husband, I could only bow my head in embarrassment. Then he seemed to come up with something and smiled at me. Julie, I have a good idea. Huh? The plan he revealed to me was amazing. It may be small as revenge, but it would certainly trouble my mother-in-law. When I agreed to the plan, my husband immediately called our lodging. Hello? We're scheduled for stay for 5 days starting today. Yes. We'd like to change the name of the reservation, please. Please keep the same price. Thank you. After the conversation, my husband looked at me and said, You finally smiled, Julie. A few hours later, when I arrived at the resort facility, my mother-in-law was already there. Tyson, I'm fine with staying in the same room as you guys. My husband smiles and tells her, I've arranged a special room for you, Mom. If you give your name, they'll show you to your room. Dash oh my, you went through all that trouble? I feel bad. Dash it's okay. You have been taking care of Julie in various ways anyway. Dash it's okay. After all, Julie is my lovely daughter. Let's check in for now. You must be tired from sightseeing, Mom. Tyson gives his mother's name and she leans forward to ask the receptionist, Dash hey, is the suite room available? Dash, we have only one available room today. Dash then, change it to the suite room. Dash understood. Dash, is that okay? She grins and looks at me, but I just smile back at her. Dash, we then head to the suite room we were shown to. As soon as we arrive, my mother-in-law dives into the bed and acts like a child. Dash, well then, we're going to go now. Dash, huh? What are you talking about? The three of us are staying in the same room, right? Dash, no, we're not. Tyson and I will be staying in a different room. Dash, what? My mother-in-law looks stunned and freezed in place. My husband threw a sharp remark at her, Dash, you are going to pay for your own lodgings here. Got it? Dash, wait a minute. What's going on? Dash, Tyson, how could you say that to your mother? Dash, what gives you the right to say that? You've been saying terrible things and making Julie suffer all this time. Dash, I would never do such a thing. Julie and I get along just fine every day. Dash, don't be ridiculous. I heard everything from Judy. You've been bullying her and threatening her not to tell anyone. I'll never forgive you. Dash, wait. Please don't say that to your mother. My mother-in-law turned bright red and began to confront my husband. However, Tyson brushed off her arm and pulled me closer to him. When my mother-in-law saw this, she glared at me sharply and shouted, Dash, it's all your fault. If this had happened a little while ago, I would have been terrified and apologized profusely. But now I have my husband beside me. So I took a deep breath, looked my mother-in-law straight in the eye, and said everything that had been bottled up inside me. Dash, my fault? You're just trying to say it's my fault that your son hates you, aren't you? Don't be ridiculous. You brought this on yourself by doing stupid things and tormenting me. You know that everything you did has come back to haunt you, don't you? Dash, shut up. Shut up. If you hadn't come to this house, you were just afraid of losing your son. That's all. You made my life a living hell for such a stupid reason. But I won't be a pushover for you anymore. I'm not even afraid of you anymore. After my retort, my mother-in-law trembled and tried to grab me. However, my husband stopped her and called the police. Soon, my husband and I left the place, leaving my mother-in-law behind, and moved to another hotel that my husband had reserved for us. We returned home from Mexico earlier than planned and immediately signed the lease for an apartment. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law enjoyed her stay in Mexico. When she checked out, she reluctantly paid with her card for the suite room, but her account was left empty. She was shocked by the exorbitant accommodation charges. When she returned home, the house was already empty. We received multiple phone calls from my mother-in-law, but we ignored them all. Since then, we haven't seen her. She doesn't know where we moved, so we won't be meeting her again. Now that she only has her pension to rely on, she'll have to deal with a lifestyle that's a far cry from what she was used to. Tyson, thank you for believing me at that time. What are you talking about? Of course I believe you. You're my family. Yeah, you're right. Please always do for the rest of my life. Likewise. I can overcome any obstacle with this person by my side. I am reminded once again of my beloved husband, and we smile. Mother-in-law, please don't steal money from my wallet. My kleptomaniac Mill was shamelessly trying to take money out of my wallet. When I confronted her, she got mad. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. With that, my Mill kicked me out of the house. Little did she know, she was digging her own grave. My name is Alina, 27 years old. I met Mike through a friend's introduction, and today we joyously had our wedding. When I was young, I lost my dad, and my mother raised me up to this point on her own. I greatly respect and cherish her. However, on our first meeting, my soon-to-be Mil casually commented, "You look unlucky, that's why you lost your husband early." Both my mom and I were shocked that she'd so nonchalantly insult my late father. Both my father-in-law and Mike scolded her, but she got defensive, claiming she just spoke the truth. My mom was worried about my marriage, but since my father-in-law and Mike were supportive, she eventually approved. During the wedding, I was anxious about what my Mil might do. Thankfully, it went smoothly. Just when I was relaxing, there was a knock on the door of the dressing room. "Alina, it's your mom and Robert, can we come in?" "Yes, please come in." It was my mom and her boyfriend Robert. Both shared their heartfelt congratulations and took his seat. That was a wonderful ceremony. "Congratulations, Alina. You looked absolutely stunning, Alina." Robert was so moved that he cried all the time. Well, you know. Seeing Robert's tear-streaked face, both my mom and I burst into laughter. In that cheerful atmosphere, Mike knocked and entered. "Alina, great job today." "Mil, Robert, thank you for being here." "Good job, Mike." "Where are your parents?" "My mom got tired and wanted to leave early, so I let her." "I'm sorry." "It's fine. More importantly, keep your promise to me, okay?" "Of course." The agreement between my mom and Mike was that during our cohabitation, if my mother-in-law did something to me, Mike would always be there to support and defend me. Because of my Mil's insistence, I was slated to live with her after getting married. Initially, the plan was for Mike and I to live together, just the two of us, but my Mil threw a fit, insisting we couldn't get married unless we lived with her. Seeing my distress, my mom made this promise with Mike. Even my father-in-law was like, "If something's up, let me know." After trying it out, Mike told me that if living together truly became unbearable, we could consider living separately. "Alina, if my mother does something, tell me right away, okay? Even if it seems small, all right." "I understand, thanks, and I'm still working, so I'm not home that much." "I think it'll be okay." "You're being naive, Alina." "Well, this is something you'll only understand once you experience it." "Take care of my daughter, Mike." "Yes, ma'am." I was quickly going to experience firsthand the truth in my mom's words. After returning from our honeymoon, living in Mike's family home, I immediately faced my Mil's true colors. "This food looks terrible, redo it." Without even tasting the food I had just prepared, my Mil dumped it straight into the trash. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Mike immediately scolded her. But she retorted, "I can't let you two eat such terrible-looking food. I threw it out for your sake. And yet, never mind." Then she stormed off to her room. Apologizing, Mike and his dad decided to take us out for dinner. Hearing this, my Mil threw a tantrum about not being invited, but Mike and his father just ignored her. My mother-in-law didn't like it, and she began to harass me even more. Mike's family runs a small workshop, and Mike is busy preparing to take over, studying hard, attending meetings with his father, and networking. I, on my side, have my job during the weekdays, and am hardly home, but the weekends were a nightmare. Mil mostly stays home, does zero housework, and either lounges around watching TV, or goes out. Mike tries to help out when he can, and after the food incident, my father-in-law told me, I can manage on my own. Just prepare food for Mike. When my mother-in-law found out about it, she said, as a daughter-in-law, it's only natural that you should prepare for the whole family. But my father-in-law dismissed it. Adding to the mix, my Mil is very old-fashioned in her thinking. "Alina, when are you going to quit your job? When are you having kids? A woman can do anything if she has amiability and charm, you know. Don't you know that? Bah, you don't have that, so you're working." Given her comments, it's clear that my Mil doesn't work, and is a housewife. But, from what Mike has told me, she's almost incapable of doing household chores. Although she is technically an employee at my father-in-law's company, she's basically a ghost employee. She gets pocket money from my father-in-law in the name of salary, but if my mother-in-law likes something, she can't stand it and buys it immediately, so my father-in-law manages the money. Mike never lends her any money, so when she's short on cash, she comes to me asking for some. Alina, can you lend me some money? I'm sorry, but Mike told me never to lend you any money. I wondered, after all her mistreatment, why would she think I'd willingly lend her money? Even after refusing, she persisted. I'll make sure Mike and your dad don't find out, okay? I can't. Sorry. Please, Alina. I'm sorry. My Mill tried to put on her best smile and pleaded, but when I kept refusing, she lashed out with her typical temper tantrum. Why the attitude? You're really stingy that you won't lend me even though I'm asking you so much. I can't believe it. That's why I'm always being mean to you. Does she even realize she's the one being mean? Honestly, it's amazing that someone as kind-hearted as Mike could come from a mother with such a character. Just when I was trying to mentally escape from my Mill's drama, she stormed off somewhere, clearly irritated. When Mike came home and I reported how his mother had been pestering me for money, both he and my father-in-law scolded her. But far from showing remorse, my Mill shot me a glare, saying, "You tattled." My sneaky Mill, seemingly desperate for money, tried to rummage for my purse and take cash from my wallet while I was out of the room. Just then, we locked eyes as I walked back in. Mill, don't you dare take money from my wallet. I can't believe this. I warned her, but she just snapped back at me. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. You're basically stealing from someone else's wallet. How dare you speak up to me? Unbelievable. If you're going to be like this, just leave this house. I had reached my breaking point with my utterly selfish Mill. Honestly, being cut off from such an unreasonable Mill would be a blessing. I told her, fine, and started packing my things. All the while, she watched me with a smug grin, seemingly pleased, thanks for everything. It had only been a short 3-month stay with my in-laws, but I vowed never to live with my Mill again, and headed home. I was so furious I completely forgot to inform Mike, but when he got home, he filled me in on his exchange with his mother. Where's Alina? Yay, where did Alina go? When Mike and his father got home from work, and noticed my absence, they questioned my Mill. With a triumphant attitude, she said, "Oh, I just kicked that useless daughter-in-law out." While she laughed heartily, both Mike and father-in-law looked pale and concerned. Realizing they weren't amused, but still oblivious, she went on, "This is what I've been saying. I told you not to marry a woman from a single-parent family. All she does is disobey and defy me. All she needed to do was to nod and agree with whatever I say. What have you done?" Father-in-law shouted, more agitated than I had ever seen him. My Mill looked taken aback, clearly not expecting this reaction. Father-in-law collapsed to his knees, looking like he'd seen a ghost, muttering, "It's over. My life is over." What's the matter? Mill seemed bewildered, unable to keep up with the turn of events. You've done something unthinkable. Why are you so angry? Alina is the stepdaughter of the CEO of the company we do business with. What? It seemed to finally dawn on my Mill what she had done. Her face momentarily turned white, but she quickly recovered, insisting she did nothing wrong. Mike, call Alina right now. I did. She's at Robert's place now. This is bad, let's go right away. I received a call on my cell from Mike saying his father-in-law was forcibly putting his Mill into the car and heading our way. It must have been inside the car. I could hear the Mill's frantic shouts and the father-in-law's yelling. Robert, you came to the wedding with my mother, is her new husband. Even though he's technically my stepfather, it turns out Robert is actually the boss of my father-in-law's business client. My mother had always said she wouldn't remarry until after I got married, so she hadn't met our families until the wedding, and wasn't seated in the family section at the ceremony. So, the mill doesn't know about this. My father-in-law only recently found out that Robert was my mother's new husband. Robert married my mother after I got married, but I've known Robert for nearly 20 years. After my father passed away, my mother raised me on her own. No matter how tough things got, she never complained and was always smiling, brightening up everyone around her. Robert, smitten by her, proposed to her, but she apparently told him she wouldn't marry anyone until after I was married. I don't want to burden Alina anymore. Getting a new dad, changing her last name, moving, I can't make her go through all of that just because of adult circumstances. I'm so sorry. I'll wait. Huh. Alina. I'll wait until Alina grows up, becomes independent, and someday gets married and is happy. Then it'll be my turn to make you happy. Robert. Can I stay and watch over Alina with you until then? By then, won't we be pretty old? It doesn't matter. If we're talking age, I'll be even older. Robert laughed heartily. My mother, tears in her eyes, just thanked him. Robert respected my mother's wishes, always saying he'd wait. They never officially got married until I did, but I knew they were deeply in love. Even as a child, after losing my father, I sometimes felt like if my mother married Robert, she'd be taken away from me. There were times I wasn't kind to Robert, but Robert always treated me lovingly, often taking us out or going on trips. He even tried to pay for my college tuition. My mother declined, saying it was a matter of principle, but that's the kind of relationship we had with Robert. Of course, my childhood home is now Robert's. So as the mill said, we went back to Robert's place. When we told Robert everything that had happened at the in-laws' place and about the mill, he was livid. Considering the relationship with my father-in-law's company, he was boiling with anger when the doorbell rang. When my mother checked the monitor, there were images of my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Mike. She asked Robert if they could be let inside. Robert replied, "Let them in," and unlocked the door to welcome them. Immediately upon seeing us in the tense atmosphere, both my father-in-law and Mike got down on their knees. I'm deeply sorry. My wife was very rude to Alina. Mom seemed to have chased Alina out. I'm sorry. If Alina is uncomfortable, we can stop living together. While my father-in-law and Mike were apologizing, the person in question, my mill, stood defiantly with her arms crossed. Oh, what are you talking about? Alina is the one to blame, right? I'm not at all wrong. Besides, if Alina is gone, who's going to do the housework? I was dumbfounded and couldn't close my open mouth looking at the indifferent mill. I knew she lacked common sense, but I never thought she would go this far. It was my father-in-law who broke the silence. I knew you were sheltered and naive, but I never imagined you'd go this far. He sighed in resignation and told my mill that they should divorce. We'll start the divorce proceedings as soon as tomorrow. I'm utterly disappointed in you. What are you talking about? Why should I be the one to get a divorce? If anyone should, it should be Alina and Mike since she left on her own. The moment she was confronted with the idea of divorce by her husband, her earlier arrogance vanished. Mike joined in the confrontation. Why should I divorce Alina? I love her. I have no intention of divorcing her. We only agreed to live together because you begged us, crying, and yet you treat Alina like a maid. Stop talking nonsense. My father-in-law nodded in agreement and said in a mix of exasperation and anger, "Your father asked me to take care of you, so I became your husband and took care of you. But no matter how many times I warn you, you never listen, and you never show any remorse. At this age, you're beyond my control." The mother-in-law clings to the father-in-law who looks far away, perhaps remembering the hardships he had until now. What about the company? It belonged to my father. Your father passed the company to me when he passed away. Even if I retire, Mike is here. You've only been a name at the company and haven't done any real work. Do you think you can suddenly handle it? I won't let the employees end up on the streets because of you. Mimel seems to be looking for a way out, as she's being blamed by her husband and Mike. By the way, Mimel is a true blue daddy's girl. Raised in luxury, she's never really worked a day in her life, always living as a pampered princess. Without her husband's support, she wouldn't be able to handle household chores, let alone a job. Mimel tried to cling to my father-in-law, but his decision seemed final. Alina, say something. Out of desperation, she turned to me for support. I also think divorce is the right decision. Someone who tries to steal money from another's wallet, and then retaliates when called out on it. Who knows what she might do next? What are you talking about? To the two who might not know the real reason I left, I explained, the cause was Mile trying to steal money. Their faces drained of color. I can't believe this. It's unbelievable. Oh, stop exaggerating. I was just borrowing a bit. Both my mother and Robert retorted to the unapologetic Mile. In general, that's called theft, which is a serious crime. I had thought you were an unreasonable person, but I object to returning my daughter to a place where someone like you resides. I object too. Alina may not be blood-related, but she's my precious daughter. How can I return such a dear daughter to someone who treats her so poorly? There's nothing I can say in response to that. We are truly sorry. Ever since we started this conversation, both your father-in-law and Mike have been repeatedly apologizing, but you haven't said sorry once. You're the cause of this, aren't you? Why can you act like this? Both of them kept apologizing, but the Mile showed no sign of remorse. Well, that's because... Look, I've seen a few people like you in my time, so I can pretty much guess. I'd recommend a divorce if I were you. Don't make decisions for me. The one being unreasonable is you. Enough is enough. I'm telling you, I'll go to court if I have to, but I'm divorcing you. That's final. No, please. The father-in-law really did have the divorce papers ready, with his part filled out. He was ready to take it to court if the Mile refused. Finally getting the gravity of the situation, the Mile relented and signed the divorce papers. Handing over half the assets to the Mile, the father-in-law looked strangely relieved. Mike kept his promise to my mom and cut ties with the Mile. The father-in-law also washed his hands off her. Even after the divorce, the Mile couldn't control her shopping habits and quickly burned through her share of the assets. The Mile tried several times to reach out to the two of them, but they've completely blocked her out. I happened to spot someone who looked like the Mile the other day. She had aged significantly, her once proud and arrogant demeanor gone, looking so frail as if she might collapse if touched. Her whole aura had changed. Because of her attitude, she's always been kept at arm's length. Now, after this whole debacle, negative rumors about her spread like wildfire. There seems to be no one left willing to help her. It's said that she's finally feeling remorse for her actions. As they say, don't stand before you regret it. Some days later, the father-in-law and Mike visited Robert with a box of chocolates to apologize. When I explained to Robert and my mother that my mother-in-law had disappeared, they warned them to not let it happen again. After that, I returned to Mike's family home. Since the Mile left, my stress levels have dropped significantly. Not only me, but both the father-in-law and Mike seem to be smiling a lot more. Soon after, I found out I was pregnant, and the whole family was overjoyed. We're all eagerly waiting for our new family member. I grew up surrounded by a loving family and good friends, an ordinary family and an ordinary me, in terms of my look, academic and sports. But I think I was very fortunate to have good people around me. Maybe that's why I have a tendency to trust people too much. Because of this, I often hear people call me naive or mystical. This story is about my pathetic mother-in-law, who bullied a trusting daughter-in-law. My name is Mary. I'm 31 and work as a salesman. My husband Jake and I just got married a year ago, so I still feel like a newlywed then. Let's have a baby. I used to say, but honestly, I was still enjoying our newlywed life. Jake's parents were still together and lived about 20 minutes right from our apartment. Diane, Jake's mom, used to invite us to dinner at the house, and we enjoyed a family dinner once a month. My friends worried that, isn't it too much for you to go to your in-laws' house once a month? But Tom, Jake's dad, was a good conversationer, and Diane was sweet, so it was not at all bothersome for me. Besides, Diane seems to be the type who preferred to work alone in the kitchen, so I was always treated like a guest. I used to happily join affiliatives with Jake and Tom until the dinner was served, so it was easier than preparing dinner at home. There was only one thing that concerned me. That day, we were again at the in-laws' house for a family dinner. But when I tasted the chicken soup Diane made, I groaned invariably. "What's wrong, Mary?" Jake looked at me curiously. Ahem. Just that I have never had a celery in chicken soup at my parents', so I thought it was interesting. "It's delicious, Diane." "Is it?" "Thank you. There's plenty more." "Oh, great." I struggled to smile back at Diane, who was looking happy. One more bowl of this soup would stood up my blood pressure. That's how salty the chicken soup was. I glanced at Jake and Tom, but they seemed enjoying the soup. This is a normal taste of home cooking for them. That day, too, I accepted. I forced myself to eat up the soup that contained so much sodium that it could dissolve. Apparently, my in-laws seems to like intense flavors. Diane's cooking was as salty as seawater at times and as sweet as condensed milk at other times. The first time that I tried it, I almost spit it out. But the other members of the family ate it as normal as any other day. I was astonished with their preferred flavoring. I felt bad to leave food, so I usually ate it all. But it must have been too much that my stomach used to get upset. The impact of eating such an intense flavored food on a daily basis was my great concern for their health. I had consulted with my nutritionist friend and had been collecting recipes and pamphlets, but there was no way a new daughter-in-law could say, "Your cooking is too rich in flavor. Please modify recipes." By the way, my home cooking was exactly seasoned according to the recipe. I thought it was flavorless for Jake. I used to ask him, "Is it good?" Constantly. Even time I did. "Whatever you cook is delicious," he replied sweetly. But if we grew up eating such rich food, I couldn't believe he was being honest. Regardless, I prioritized our health and cook with normal seasonings. Then, there was one more thing that worried me. Diane served salad food. The rolls of bread on my plate were dry and hard ones. Sometimes, partially rotten fruits were served for dessert. I discreetly removed the parts one couldn't eat. But I was worried that my in-laws were to get food poisoning sooner or later. "Cookies for a snack, Mary." Those cookies Diane gave me were expired at 6 months ago. Jake realized and, Mom, those cookies are expired, alerted. Diane replied, "Oh no, I am so careless." I was relieved that she left it aside. But then I shivered when I found the same box of cookies mixed in a snack bag she gave me on the next visit. I have seen this symptom before. The time my grandma got dementia. What to do? Diane's still in her 50s. I doubted she had dementia. I wanted to discuss with Jake about the too rich flavored food. And Diane may be showing signs of dementia. But I was too afraid that it was too much for him. Then one day, a small miracle happened to us. I became pregnant. I'm finally going to be a dad. Isn't a boy or girl? Jake stroked my belly every day with excitement. When are we going to tell our parents? Should we wait until the end of first trimester? Well, doctor only confirmed the heartbeat. But I want them to help me in case something happens. So I will tell them after the 12 weeks checkup. I guess we just have to wait and see. I can't wait to tell everyone. I think my mom's gonna cry when she hears the news. You're right. I imagined Diane congratulating me with tears in her eyes. I felt warmth in my heart. I had been so excited about my long-awaited pregnancy that many things had completely slipped out of my mind. The following weekend, when I saw Diane's chicken soup on the table, I finally realized that there was a big problem. If I ate her over-seasoned food, it might affect my baby. The pregnancy books I'd been reading said high blood pressure and diabetes can affect the condition of pregnancy and childbirth. Stella breads and all the other things that might be expired could be okay for me but might affect my baby. The thought made me anxious. I couldn't start eating. Oh no, Mary, you haven't eaten at all. I hope it wasn't too bad for your taste. Diane looked at my plate and frowned. No, it's not that. She's tired and doesn't have much of an appetite. Jake thought it was morning sickness and rushed to save me. I see. Are you working too hard, Mary? Don't push yourself too much. Thank you. Tom was kind, but Diane's face remained grim. I felt guilty for leaving the food and lying to them. But after everyone else finished their meal, Diane offered me a large brownie with an ice cream on top along with a cup of tea. Have some sweets at least. I'm sure it will relax you. Thank you so much. What a thoughtful person. I thought I would at least have a bite. But lately I got heartburn after eating sweets. I saw Jake got a smaller piece without an ice cream. I whispered to Jake so that Diane couldn't hear from the kitchen. Jake, can I switch with yours? Huh? Oh, sure. He gladly passed me his plate and I cut a thin piece with my fork. It was moist and soft. I put it in my mouth and downed with tea. Huh? This brownie is a little hard. Jake had cut his in half and when he tried to put it in his mouth. No. Diane screamed as it burst out of the kitchen. My heart jumped a bit at the sudden outburst. Jake looked equally puzzled when Diane took his brownie from his hand. Why are you having Mary's brownie? I gave it to her. Doesn't matter who eats it. Yes, it does. This one is outdated. What? Whoops. An unexpected bombshell silenced us all. Confused by her revelation, I asked. That brownie was old. I didn't notice 'cause the ice cream was melting on top. My words didn't ease the situation. Instead, it only confirmed that there was malice in Diane's reaction. In other words, my mom was trying to hide her stubbornness by adding ice cream on top. Isn't that right, Mom? Jake asked Diane without any emotion. The calmness of his rage made him even more fearsome. Diane seemed to know it and she was quickly trying to make things right. No, that's not it. It's old but it's big and still tasty so I wanted Mary to have it. Why did you so forcefully stop me from eating it? You gave it to Mary even though you knew it wasn't safe to eat. No way. Even I, a slow learner, finally realized and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Well, I mean, you have been feeding me stale food and giving me expired snacks, all was intentional, wasn't it? What? What's going on, honey? Tom was glaring at Diane like a devil. No, not on purpose. I just happened to have some left over and I didn't want to waste them, so I gave to Mary. That's what you called on purpose? I can't think of any good reason to make someone else eat bad food that you don't want. But she's not really our family. She's an outsider, so why not give her the old food, right? You came to my family too, but you had never been treated like that. No, but... Diane was banging on a table in panic. As I watched her, my heart dropped. There was no sign of Diane who I loved so much. I was deeply disappointed and wondered if it was all an illusion. As much as I believed she was a kind and nice person, I felt even more disgusted. Now that I knew I had been betrayed, she looked like a distressed demon making excuses. Then there was one more thing that bothered me. Was it all harmless? Could it be also on purpose that all your food tasted so intense? What? Tom and Jake were aghast. Oh. Diane's expression said, "Oh shoot," with a devil-like expression. Jake grabbed my bowl of chicken soup. Don't, Jake. Ignoring Diane's cry, Jake took a spoonful, then he spit it out. It's like seawater. Tom too tried a side dish I didn't touch and scolded. Mary, were you always eating up this kind of food? Yes, I thought this was the normal taste here. You and Jake ate it too, so. That's because ours was normal. I see. So that's how it was. Seeing me realize all that, Jake's shoulders drooped as if he had lost all his strength. But how could you not realize was it something more than just a bad flavor? She has even given you expired snacks. Because I thought she had gotten dementia. Dementia? Diane's mouth twitched. A daughter-in-law whom she hated to the point to her asses thought her mother-in-law, who was in only her 50s, had dementia. And even pitted was a huge insult to her. How pathetic. You're so sweet. You put up with her because you thought she was sick. Jake assured me with a soothing voice. On the other hand, you, Mom. That's right. I don't even want to know. You were ruling such a good girl who trusted you so. Tom and Jake said. I never thought Diane was that kind of person either. That's why I've consulted many people. Like Diane's taste buds are off and I am worried about her health. And Diane's still in her 50s, but she is showing dementia symptoms. Huh? Many people? Her expression changed quickly. She never thought that her misdeed had been spread. Like my parents, my friends, people at work. Oh, they were all helpful. They gave me all kind of tips and pamphlets. Here. I pulled pamphlets out of my bag and piled them up. I had been carrying them around with the intention of talking to Tom and Jake someday. I never thought it would come handy in this way. Whoa. You were really worried about her. The men unfolded the pamphlet as if they were moved by my action. Of course, Diane was upset. You're terrible. I am not sick. It's you who are terrible. Unlike you, she has a pure heart, so she was sincerely concerned about you. Shut up. Shut up. I didn't like her from the beginning. She became deviant. She pointed and glared at me like a demon. My beloved son was taken away by a dumb-faced woman like her. She didn't even notice the harassment. Are you that dumb? I wish for a beautiful and successful woman who makes me proud to walk around with in public. Diane, you are an idiot. Didn't you see what an amazing woman Jake married? You were being fooled by her. What the? In front of my eyes, my in-laws were having a fierce argument. Ugh. Seriously, I was hated by Diane. Even though I knew in my head, it was painful to be in someone I trusted. As I slumped, Jake whispered. Why didn't you tell me before I married Mom? If I had known, Jake. Diane looked hopeful. I knew it. He's on my side. Her eyes. If I had known, I would have cut ties. Jake. Ignoring Diane's despair, Jake held me tightly in his arms. I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't realize how much crap you were going. Jake, I'm sorry too. I didn't recognize her hideous intention. Hideous? Diane's eyes twitched. She had never expected to be told such a thing by me, whom she had looked down on. I married you because you were so pure. Don't worry. We'll never come here again. Wait. Jake. I won't allow it. You were a terrible mother. I'll never let you see our child. Our child? Are you? She looked at my belly. Now she knows. But if she had noticed earlier when I had no appetite, it might have had a different outcome. She was too preoccupied with her scheme. Let's go, Mary. Yeah. I took the hand Jake offered and stood up slowly. Wait. I'm sorry. Jake, it was just a small indiscretion. Diane was rushing to grab him. But Jake dismissed her coldly. I am not the one you should be apologizing to. Diane glanced at me. Her eyes were full of disgust. I didn't want to forgive someone who obviously carried a grudge against me. So I opened my mouth before she could say anything. I had a great trust in you. And you betrayed me. I can no longer trust you for the rest of my life. I can't let such a person be with my precious child. Goodbye. No. Diane collapsed in anguish. We left without batting an eye. With Tom seeing us, we would never come here again. It's strange for me to say this, but if only Diane could have cherished our relationship. She could have lived a happy life as a grandmother surrounded by her grandchildren. What a fool. Later, when I told my parents and friends who would get me their support. You finally realized. They were either stunned or relieved. Apparently, everyone but me was aware that I was being bullied. But they couldn't tell me because I was truly worried about Diane. At least, they were listening to me and collecting pamphlets. So that I could prove when I finally realized one day. I felt ashamed and embarrassed that my face was burning. In fact, thanks to the large amount of materials that everyone had given to me, I was able to prove that I have been seriously concerned. Thanks to them, Jake and Tom were completely on my side. I realized once again that I have been truly blessed by the people around me. About 2 years later, I have been busy taking care of my little son. Today is his first birthday. Birthday cake, fried chicken and some other stuff. I am hard at work preparing dishes I am not accustomed to making. Jake has been a great dad by playing with our son and changing his diaper. In the middle of it, I got a call from Tom. He was invited to the birthday party. I picked up the phone without hesitation, thinking he might have something to ask me. Hello, Mary? The caller who is making sweet voice and checking my mood was of course, not Tom. Even after 2 years, I know it's Diane. After we cut ties, we moved to a new place far away from her. And only told Tom. I also blocked Diane's phone number. And had my number erased from her phone as well. Thanks to Jake and Tom being shield between us. I didn't get her unwelcomed visit at the hospital when I gave birth. I've been able to live a really peaceful life. And now, she wants to ruin it. Just the thought of her on the other end of the phone. I get goosebumps. Where is Tom? He's in the bathroom right now. Hey, isn't it my grandson's birthday today? I don't think Tom told her. But she might have noticed him discreetly preparing gift. Jake sensed something is wrong from my tone of voice. He gestures to take over the phone with a worried look on his face. But I give him a thumbs up. I continue the call. I am too. A mother now. An innocent lovely wife is a thing of the past. Listen, Mary. I seriously feel bad about what happened. I was wrong to do such mean things. I regret very much. So I want to see my grandson soon. I'll buy him lots of cute clothes and toys. See? Okay? Well, I don't need you to hide needles in or bug the toys. So, no, thank you. No, I wouldn't do such a horrible thing. I mean, you fed me all those disgusting stuff. You're exaggerating. It wasn't that bad, was it? Too much salt, sugar, and mold. Too much of any of it would have destroyed my health. But, I mean it. I really regret. I'm sure you were kind enough that you would understand. You're right. I'm often told that I am kind. Yes, you are. But it's not that I'm kind. I'm just naive and trust people too much. If someone betrays me, I will never trust them again. So you will never gain my trust ever again. And I will not forgive you. I'll never let you see my precious son. Wait, Mary. Hey, what are you doing? Tom. I can hear Tom and Diane yelling at each other on the other end of the line. I quietly press the end button. Sorry for that. But you're getting stronger, Mary. Jake sighs in relief. He places his hands on my shoulder in encouragement. Of course, I'm his mother. My son looks content lying in his crib. And when he sees me, he flaps his hand happily. In response, I pick him up and rub my cheek against his. His body is small and soft. His mouth has a slight scent of milk. His dark eyes reflecting me. The presence of my son gives me an overflow of protective maternal feelings. For my son, I can be an angel or a demon. I've outgrown my gentle but naive wife. Oh, it smells so good. It's about time the birthday cake is ready in the oven. My innocent son happily replies, to which we smile broadly. The day when I was oblivious of the malice of others, I was carefree and happy. But that was because of the people who protected me. So now it is my turn to protect my family. I'm adamant to be stronger and stronger so that these happy days would continue for a